I remember telling you at the end of it, I was like, "Can we push it a little bit farther?" He's like, "You're like, I think we're good for right now."
Yeah, well,
And
that's the thing, like, because you get in that, like, when you get in that obsessed mindset, you really can, like, your body almost like shuts down. I mean, you're still hungry and stuff, but it's like it learns to adapt, and you get in this like situation where you almost like enjoy the suffering, even though you
Mhm.
hate it, but it's like you don't know any different. It's, like you're like with anything, it's hard to change, and so you're almost like scared of like you're scared, like you feel like if I'm not in misery, then it must
Yeah,
be bad, you know.
yeah, and I've kind of fell into that a little bit this week because I mean things are sky high right now in terms of where they were previously, and it's the thing that kept me going before was one more day. Let's see what else pops up because like a new vein would pop up every couple of days. It was like, oh, this is pretty damn cool. It's like it's almost it's
Glad to be on.
awesome for so the people that don't know you. Could you just do a basic background?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. It's I've done a bunch of things, so it's hard to do it. But my background in this area is my undergrad is in exercise science. I worked briefly as an exercise physiologist and an echocardiographer, and then nutritionist for a cardiology group. And then, I was coaching and doing all this kind of on the side, and that kind of became. It got to where it was kind of point. It was growing so much that it was pointless to keep the day job. So I left and did this full time. And like I want to do, one day I read a book called Probability One. I think it's by Amit Azir or something like that. And it was intriguing to me. And it was about physics and astronomy. And so I read a couple more, and then I decided I wanted to learn theoretical physics and math. And so I never even taken any math courses or anything. So I went back and completely started from scratch. And then I got a master's in physics. Went worked in engineering, worked as a test engineer, and then test and controls engineer, and did some reliability engineering, more like math and computer programming type stuff. Uh, but then I went, I started coaching again because I never seem to stay away very long. And then the same situation again. This grew to where that keeping the engineering job was kind of pointless. And then I've been back doing this full time since 2020. But yeah, I think that's when I officially left. Early. Oh yeah, no, it was a very early 2020 because it was February. It was like 2 weeks before COVID would have had me at home anyways. So I was a little worried it was the wrong decision. But and then also since I can't just stick to one thing, since then I started First Attachment supplements, and then the teamtroponin.com education website.
That's awesome. So the physics part, like as a guy who's in my high school math guy who's not really good at math, but I do it anyway. Like, what got you to really get the bug for that? I mean, what was it?
What's weird is I was bad at math always.
Yeah.
I was in remedial math in elementary school. I don't think I was necessarily bad. What I've learned is I think I have like number dyslexia. I
Okay.
hate numbers to this day. I don't like numbers. You don't use, but I never knew there was math beyond arithmetic. Arithmetic sucks. It's like one little tiny little corner of math. The rest of math is nothing to do with numbers. I mean, even physics, you solve a problem and you get a final equation, and the numbers part comes in by just putting the numbers in there. It has nothing to do with knowledge or intelligence. It's just whether your fingers aren't too fat to punch them in a calculator.
Mm-hmm.
It's understanding the formulas and the relations. It was really calculus that made me fall in love with math, and I never would have known that because I self-taught Calc 1, and then I took Calc 2 and Calc 3 together. Those were my first math classes, actually,
Oh Jesus.
which is actually, I think, good because if I would have built up the standard way, I think I wouldn't have. I don't. I know I wouldn't have liked the earliest stuff. I mean, geometry is okay, but and trig still has no interest to me. I mean, even trigonometry, I would use, because you can reproduce trigonometry with geometry using exponential and the imaginary number I is square root of -1. Like e to the I theta is cosine theta plus I sine theta, or 1/2 e to the I theta plus e to the negative I theta is cosine. You can replace all of trigonometry. It's one of the first unifying theories, actually, but you can. And so if I would have went the traditional route, it would have been all like number heavy and things that were like non-visual things that weren't interesting to me. And then learning Calc 1 by myself, I wasn't really forced to I mean, I had to learn later. You really need to understand the theory and what limits are and everything. But I got to learn like the mechanical action of taking a derivative, which is actually really easy. like the derivative of x squared is just 2x. The derivative of x cubed is 3x squared. I mean, it's a simple, so I just learned the mechanical action of it, and then I got to play with it and kind of develop like the visual framework in my own way, which I think completely is the only thing that saved me, because I didn't do well in the math portion or ACT. I never did, so it was, there never was an interest in math until, and there still isn't, like number math. I love mathematics, but it has to be like something I can visualize, which like calculus allows you to do that, because, it's continuous, it's non-discrete. It's basically always mapping things from one thing to another, and how things, transform, either spatially or across time, depending on what derivative you're taking.
Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty cool. My first teaching job that I had, I worked with a lady whose son was with SpaceX. He was the guy that did the numbers, to get out into outer space.
Yeah.
And she was telling me, like, they wanted to put him on a special plan, an IEP in school, because he didn't know his times tables. And she's like, he won't hire anybody now. They can't use a calculator. He doesn't care what you know inside your head. He wants to know how can you actually apply it.
Yeah, and that's what, like, I really dislike about the American school system, even through undergrad, is like, if you want to study physics in the UK, you take physics lectures. Mm-hmm. You don't have quizzes every week. You don't have tests every other week. You take your series of lectures, and at the end of your first or second year, you take your comprehensive. Mm-hmm. And if you pass, then you can go to the third year and get your degree. Mm-hmm. It might be slightly more testing than that, but it's not a test every week, because it takes time to learn things. When you have a test every Friday over what you've learned for the week, you didn't learn anything. You're just proving that you were able to memorize it to some level for Friday. Yeah. The test of whether you learn it is, can you pass a final exam that covers everything we learned for the year, not just in this class, but all the basic minimum physics requirements you need to understand. Mm-hmm. And that was always how I always said, like, if I might have got an 85% on an exam, in 1997, and someone else might have got 100%, but you could give me that same exam today and I'd get an 85%, because I either know something or I don't. I can't memorize things.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. It seems like math is just like the rest of your career. Like, it's a cumulative body of work. And I've emailed you back and forth, like, how do you know where to set people at when they start off on a diet? Because it seems like every time it's right there. And
I think I used to probably have like formulas. I know I did kind of at one point, but it's a weird thing. And I try to explain it to people. I don't remember a time I wasn't doing this. I've been doing this half my life, since I was a kid, basically. I don't remember a time I didn't know how many calories were in protein. I don't remember a time I didn't know, basically. I don't remember a time I couldn't tell you how many grams of how many ounces of chicken were 50 grams of protein. It's just been my whole life for over 20 years. And so it's kind of like, I think, for the audiences here, if they follow bodybuilding, this analogy might make more sense. Like if my mom sees the Mr. Olympia, competitors, she can't tell who's good and who isn't. They all look the same to her. Where me, like, the guy who wins Mr. Olympia looks completely different than someone who's 15th. I mean, you can see how much better a Phil Heath is than someone who places 15th. I mean, it's just a night and day difference. And I think anyone who follows the sport can see that clearly. And another analogy would be like gymnastics. You watch the Olympics, I can't tell who's doing good, other than, like, if someone falls, I know it's bad, but sometimes someone stumbles on the landing and gets a better score than someone who didn't stumble. It's like, but the judges understand all that. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of what nutrition is. I've just done it. That's all I do. I have, I can tell you right now, today's a rough one. I got 65 emails still, 65 full check-ins. I get all my junk emails, like the quick ones and the quick questions, and try to power through those, because the check-ins, I mean, even if I nail everything and quick to make the changes, a 10-minute turnaround to respond to a check-in is probably about as good as you can expect. Mm-hmm. That's 650 minutes. I got 11 hours of emails left today, so, and that's not taking pee breaks. That's not eating. And so I work, but I like a high workload. I like to be, I don't even know what to do with myself if I'm not doing something. I wake up, I come in my office. I have 4 kids, so there's always something pulling me away from school. But other than that, I'm here. about, like maybe 7 a.m. I'm here till 9 p.m. I might get a workout in during the day also, but I'm here till about 9:30 is usually when I try to say, okay, I'm done like hardcore answering emails. But all I do is walk right downstairs, and I'm trying to learn to be a pool player right now.
Okay.
So all I do is walk right downstairs and start playing pool. Not that I'm not like an energetic person. I don't mind. I'm lazy, but I have to be doing something. I can't just I can't sit and look at social media or do or I don't know. So that's it. So I actually prefer to keep a high client load, and I like when clients ask questions. I like to be busy.
So about how many clients do you have currently?
I almost don't like to say because I don't want people to know. Probably more than most coaches. we have. I can say how many total Troponin Nutrition clients we have across the three coaches. Is I think 262 was the last audit I did. So.
That's a lot of people that are banking their lives on you guys. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I just don't want people to. I don't think people would know. It's not. There's a limit, and I'm always right about my limit. Like I just turned someone down today and said, I'm sorry. I think I'd like to work with you. I'm booked up, and I offered. I said Thomas has openings, so I have my limit. That I won't take on more than I can handle, but I'm always right about at that limit edge.
So you mentioned bodybuilding. That's your background. Like, what got you into it? Like, what was the bug that bit you on that?
Same thing. I don't remember a time I wasn't interested in that. I think it started with the 1989 Arnold Classic was on like NBC.
Okay.
The very, very first Arnold Classic. I think Sean Ray won. I had no idea who any of them were then, but that would have been March of '89. I was 8 years old. And, I was a kid of the 80s. And I loved movies. That's all I did. Like I lived in a small town with there's no cable TV. And I remember in 1985, cable TV came to Capac, Michigan, and it just changed my life because Arnold and and Sylvester Stallone, Rambo and Rocky, and that was all on HBO every day. And it was that was the 80s, the decade of the action hero. And I just I was mesmerized by it. I just thought it was cool. I was like a typical 6-year-old boy who thinks army stuff. I used to when the army commercials used to come on. I used to write the phone number down because you had to be 18, and I'd put it in my mom's jewelry cabinet, so that when I turned 18, I could call that number and sign up because I thought it would be Rambo or whatever. But and I think I watched that, and I remember trying to draw them that night before bed. I was just mesmerized by the bodybuilders, and from then on, I kind of wanted to. I had a weight set when I was a kid. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I think my mom had to drive me to the gym at first. I think I was 15 when I started, and she would drive me on the way to work, and I would work out before school, and then school was a mile away from the gym, so I'd walk to school after working out. So even it's like a 15-year-old, I get up at 4:30 or 5 a.m. to work out. I was just anyone who's got bit by it knows what I'm talking about. You walk, the smell, it's a weird, silly thing, building your muscles up. There's no real purpose at first it seems like it does, but once you kind of in modern society, there's not really any need for it, and it's not like a vanity thing for me because I don't dress like a bodybuilder, but there's just something about pushing yourself in the gym. I think actually, not to get too long on a rant, I think it really was the progress, because I was never, as a kid, I was, I made all-stars in Little League and stuff. I was good at baseball, but I was short. I wasn't muscular. I was kind of pudgy. I was smaller for my age, always smaller for my age. And so I was just kind of like a nothing burger, just kind of blah, and I hated it. I don't think other than my friends, I don't think anyone at school knew I existed. I certainly wasn't an athlete. And I thought you were just kind of stuck in life with that, how you were, and then whatever I did, I remember what I did the first time at the gym. I think I maxed out at 95 pounds on bench. I think it wasn't even me really. I think whoever there helped me a little bit. Yeah. But I remember, eventually I was able to do 195 by myself. And then I remember I could do a 35 on each side, on bench. And I was I used to not even be able to do 25 without help. Now I can get one. And it just I was I can, pretty soon I'll be doing a 45 on each side, which I was. And the idea that what my future entailed was up to me. It wasn't just I wasn't just floating through life. I could decide where life took me. Just really, really struck something with me. And I've just been obsessed with that ever since. Progress. That's what the pool thing is right now. I just want to learn how to play pool. I'm getting to where I can clear racks pretty regularly, 9-ball, straight pool. Some like I can do like masse and some little trick stuff, and then I'll kind of get to where like it's already kind of getting to the point where if I have to play every day now or I'll lose some skill, and I'm not all like there's no like I'm not automatically better next week that I was this week. Once that phase kind of hits where you start leveling off, it's weird, but that's when I'll kind of like start to lose interest and I'll get obsessed with a new thing to make progress on.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I'll pick up a thing here or there, and it's like the only thing that's ever stuck with me is training.
Same. Yeah, there's always been training. It's my whole life. It's been training, and then all these other things like physics, math, the guitar, piano, pool, powerlifting, engineering,
like
computer programming.
My wife asked me the other day. She's like, "What one thing have you stuck with?" I'm like, well, I train every day. She's like, "That's an obsession." I said, "What's the difference?"
Yeah, they all are. They're just this is the only obsession that you never reach that stall point. There's always room to make changes.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. But with me, it was the first time I saw The World's Strongest Man, and these guys are picking up heavy crap and they're throwing heavy stuff. And I remember being in college one year, and we had a party at my house, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. And I'm out front. I'm bombed out of my mind, tossing this keg over the tree in my front yard. And the cop stops. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm training for the World's Strongest Man." And he's like, "Hey, man, it's your deposit, buddy. Just let me alone, But it's like it was the only thing I ever wanted to do is be strong. And
same. It was always strength for me more than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding didn't come until after college. I mean, like at first, you had to buy the bodybuilding magazines because that's all there was.
Yep.
There was Powerlifting USA, but I always used to joke that would come out like 4 times a year.
Yep.
And I think the GNC in town got like 4 copies, and there were 8 of us who were interested in powerlifting. So it was like I was lucky enough. Anytime I went to the mall, I'd run right to GNC and hope there'd be one on the rack, And if I got there before one of the other 8 people did, I might get one. But they're just people like with the internet today don't realize it was so shrouded in mystery.
Yep.
The whole everything, which was probably good because if it was as like easily accessible as it is today, I don't know that I'd be as interested in it because like it was like you did remember Flex Magazine Workout would be on or American Muscle Magazine or something like that, like on ESPN. They'd be on at like 4:15 in the morning, and so like I'd set like a recorder on my VCR. I think that was before you can set recording. I think I'd find the longest tape I could and like stay up as late as I could and then record and hope it was still recording when it came on at like 4 a.m. I still have some of those at my parents' house. I could recite those like what Lee Priest said in one of the American Muscle magazines. The Flex Magazine workouts were kind of lame, but that was your only chance to see like anything with bodybuilding. You never saw videos. There was nothing. You saw, like overtouched photos on magazines once a month. Yeah. So it was I was just bitten by the bug for sure.
There was a TV show in the 80s, early 90s where it was bodybuilders training on ESPN. I don't remember if you remember that at all.
That was Flex Magazine Workout.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was 2. There was that, and there was American Muscle Magazine or something.
Okay.
Which I think Tim Terwilliger was the announcer for. He's got like a voice. He announced other sports and stuff. And that was, like in the late 80s, early 90s. It was when the ESPN2 would do that weird like camera in and out. Like if I watch them now, I'm like, oh my God, how did we watch this? And it's got all those the purples and dark and light and fluorescent blues of like the late 80s, early 90s and zigzags and across the screen. And it was just so like Saved by the Bell, late 80s, early 90s motif. But
like it was just things to me, like it was so much more pure, especially because you're a little kid and it's just I was enamored by it all.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Same. Yeah. Well, you didn't know any of the bad stuff about it. It just seemed like I assumed that they were stronger than everyone, faster than everyone, more athletic than it just seemed like the ultimate athlete. You learn later on. Unfortunately, you learn far too late. Like by the time you learn that those aren't true, you're that person, and you realize I'm not that great of an athlete anymore. I was actually better when I didn't have so much muscle. But
so that's another tough one. Like I want to go back to where I first found out about you, and I think it was 2007. I was the head strength coach at Canisius College, and my assistant set me down one day, and he's like, "You don't know anything." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I don't know anything. I've been in this like for 5 years, with training athletes and whatnot. He's like, "You ever read Elite FTS?" I said, "No, what is that?" And he showed me one day, And like the floodgates just opened in my mind. It's like, holy crap, I've been lied to all this time.
Yeah.
and then I found your transformation with Dave Tate. And
Yeah.
I tried to replicate Dave Tate's diet off of that, because it's like, holy crap, he's this big jack dude. Why can't I be the same thing? I'm a big guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
like, why not? And then you realize that it doesn't work like that at all.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is it's like the nutrition stuff. I mean, it's kind of the point now where there's few things that surprise me. I've seen, seen everything, but there's a lot going on. It's not like which is why there can be so many swindlers and like fad diets and things like that, because it is like, you really need to know what you're doing. You can't just, the diet that works for Dave Tate isn't the diet that works for everyone else. It works to some extent for most people, but it's not optimal, and it's the little things that make the difference, because anyone can suffer and diet for a while, but when you start losing strength and losing energy, it sucks. And if you don't know, like, and that's where the individualism comes in, because how often someone has a high carb day, or how often someone deloads, or how many carbs are on the high day, or do they get a cheat meal, do they not? Those are all the things that aren't cookie cutter, and that's really makes all the difference. It's like anything, like most of the things are, like there's a bell curve, and most of us are in the middle, and most of the time we're in the middle, but the real changes come in the rare times when we're not in the middle. And that's where like all the, it's easy to just eat a deficit. Not easy, but it's, simple, it's simple. And most people can do that to some extent, but they're like, they can go from, the low end of the bell curve as far as body composition to closer to the higher end. But to get that like second or third standard deviation from the norm, like truly shredded, it's those minor things that aren't the middle of the bell curve, is more than just, a deficit. It's knowing when to put carbs back in, when to add cardio, when to do high intensity cardio, when to do, less, that's kind of and there's no textbooks on that, really, there isn't. I mean, there's because there's no degree field in that, like if you become a nutritionist, you're a nutritionist, helping people with malnutrition issues, or, like metabolic syndrome issues in hospitals. You're not, there's no degree, there's no like job for performance nutritionist.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of see more of now. There's more postings because like the college levels picked up nutritionists and whatnot. One of my good friends growing up was with UCLA for a while doing that. So that was a cool opportunity for him.
It's crazy but even like, because I did for a while, I worked for the Eagles, or worked with Eagles players. I was never given their names. There was player X, player Y, and I never got to see their faces, but it was like astounding how little, like, because the strength and conditioning world has really, like, over the last 20 or 30 years, has just like the knowledge has exploded, like they're incredible, but the nutrition stuff is still really pretty deficient. I actually just sent like a little article to John Heck, who's the strength and conditioning coach for the Houston Texans, about applying, we're going to call it field ration sport, but a variant on field rations that's a sports drink, and like no one even at that level has even heard of high molecular weight carbohydrates, which have been a thing since 2006-ish, So, yeah.
So you think that's going to be something that's going to break through?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no doubt that a high molecular weight carbohydrate is, with a proper electrolyte blend, is better of a sports drink than a fructose or a sugar sports drink, like Gatorade. There's no, I mean, just there's like zero doubt. We have a research article on First Attachment's website that compares the standard field rations to Gatorade, and just shows like, it's like a Ferrari versus like a Model T. I mean, a Model T compared to a horse, you can drive across country with a Model T much, you don't have to feed the horse or worry about the horse dying, there's a reason. But, a Ferrari is a totally different animal. There's, just because the Model T was better than what you had before, which is Gatorade was better than water, doesn't mean it's the best,
So for the layperson that doesn't understand what high molecular weight carb is, could you explain that basically?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. Yeah, it's a molecular weight is like a high molecular weight means it has a low osmolarity. So the osmolarity of your blood is around 300. It's like 297 to 303 nanograms per millimole or something like that. And you drink, you want something lower than that. So there's osmosis. You want an osmolaric pull through the stomach. So otherwise, if you eat something that's like has an osmolarity of 300, there's no concentration gradient. So it just sits in your stomach, and water can kind of even sometimes reverse and pool in your stomach. And that's like what sugars are. And if you've chugged a bunch of Gatorade, it sits in your stomach and you get bloated and distended. You know, if you're really depleted, really dehydrated, really glycogen depleted, your gastric emptying rate will be higher, and that won't happen. But that's not what athletes are. No athlete should be going into a game glycogen depleted, you know, and you know, so that shouldn't happen. So what happens is if you drink too much of it, you kind of get like bloated and distended. And the people like Gatorade knew that. The original Gatorade formula was made in the 1960s by the Florida Gators sports science department. That's why it's Gatorade. And it was actually a much, much lower sugar concentration back then, you know, because it was they wanted to find how much sugar they could ingest without spiking insulin, which is actually very low, you know, and how much sugar they could put in without, you know, causing water to pool in the stomach, which is also very low. So the original Gatorade formulation was closer to the G2 formulation now. But when they marketed it to the public, they needed it to taste good, you know, and so they tripled the sugar, you know. So rather than like 11 grams of sugar per like 32 ounces, there's like 700 or, you know, 70 grams or whatever. And so, but with high molecular weight carbohydrates, you can cheat that, because the high molecular weights have a very low osmolarity. So it's almost like a bowling ball. High molecular weight makes sense. You know, it's basically, it just means it's a huge molecular structure, you know, rather than a little glucose molecule. I can't see my hand. I hate these mirrored. Rather than like a little glucose molecule, there's, you know, like a whole huge cluster of glucose. And we use highly branched cyclodextrins, where cyclodextrins are conic structures, like a cone, like a traffic cone. And it's hydrophilic on one side, hydrophobic on the other, which is good because then some things can get trapped inside, like amino acids or electrolytes. And as a sidetrack, that's what Febreze is. Febreze is made of cyclodextrins. And that's why you can Febreze and forget it. You spray it on something, the stink gets sucked into that hydrophilic cone, and it stays that way, or hydrophobic, whatever. And then like you can Febreze and forget it. And then months later, whenever you take a wet washcloth and wipe that area down, it reverses that hydrophobic nature. The stink goes into the washcloth, and you're good. And so we use like highly branched versions of those, which is a huge cluster of those, where those are already like a cluster of glucose molecules. So you get this huge molecule with a ton of surface area, with all these glucose molecules on the surface area. So you take like another thing, like a maltodextrin is another carb companies used to use, and it's like a line of dextrose or glucose molecules, and you can pluck one off each side. You know, so there's some slowing of the digestion compared to straight glucose, but it doesn't have a high molecular weight. It doesn't pull through your stomach. Ours is this massive cluster. So it spends almost no time in the stomach, goes right into the small intestine where nutrient absorption occurs. And it's got all this surface area where it can pluck hundreds or thousands of glucose molecules at a time to enter in the bloodstream. And because it's such a big thing, it's like an everlasting gobstopper. You know, by the time it takes a long time to get all the way through all of them. So you get really quick release of sugar in the bloodstream, almost way sooner than you would from pure sugar alone, and a sustained release, so you don't get the insulin spike. So it's like everything you'd want out of a sports drink. The only negative is that there's something called dumping syndrome, that osmotic pull is so high it can actually suck water into the colon, which you then have to dump out. And so we actually temper it a little bit with about 20% of, so 80% of the carbohydrates are highly branched cyclodextrins and 20% are glucose, which kind of avoids the dumping syndrome.
I think that's cool. Like he's a 16-year-old client of mine, is my cousin's son, and he plays pretty high level baseball right now.
Oh man, yeah.
And he's one of the guys that I told his dad, I said, I think you ought to get some EAAs and some highly branched cyclodextrin. Mostly because I think it'll sustain through a game, because he might play 2 or 3 games on a Saturday or Sunday. So it's
especially a travel ball at that age, they're huffing it. And I mean, like you wouldn't think it would make that big of a difference, because you think like, you know, like I used to play and not eat anything, you know, and I'd still have decent games, but you never know the difference until you really add it in, and it does make a difference. I have a men's league softball player who's like in a pretty intense league, and you know, like where they take it very seriously, where he's like a power lifter, and he's basically stopped like powerlifting, you know, and they travel over the country and stuff. And like implementing that stuff for him, he went from like a good player to, you know, like nationally recognized. He'll bat like 848 for tournaments. He like leads the nation in home runs, you know. And so it's like in games like that where, you know, you have like 0.12 seconds to decide whether to swing or not swing on like a 90-mile-an-hour pitch, you know. It's like that's about as quick as you can stop a stopwatch. I mean, there's no time. And so and then you got to hit a round ball with a round bat. you know, of anything, like you'd think baseball wouldn't matter, like things like that wouldn't make that big of a difference because Babe Ruth did it on, you know, hot dogs and beer. It's like, no, that's the sport where it probably makes the biggest difference. That, you know, like where you talk, like most sports are a game of inches. That's a game of like micrometers, you know.
Yeah, I think that's cool. So I think I've heard you say something before about the managing of glycogen and the manage of losing fat. Is
Mm-hmm.
there what's the balancing act that you try to create within a nutrition program
Mm-hmm.
to kind of do that?
Okay, so the thing about nutrition is at its core, it's really very simple. And that's one of the disservices we do is because people don't understand. People think you need to eat more to lose weight, which isn't true. All food is energy. All a calorie is an energy. It's the amount of energy it takes to raise 1 gram of water, 1 degree Celsius. That's a lowercase c calorie. We use kilocalories, which is 1,000 times that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no different than like gasoline in your gas tank. You fill your gas tank up and you drive until your gas tank is empty. We fill our body up with calories with the different, that's just an energy source, and we burn it off. Now, the one difference is we have 3 gas tanks. We have muscle, which we store proteins. We have glycogen, is how we store carbohydrates. It's glycogen in the liver and the muscles. And then we have fat, obviously, which we can store almost unlimited. So you take in a certain amount of gas, you know, energy, and it gets spread out into those 3 sources. If you burn more, you know, if you could imagine like you had 3 gas tanks in the car and you filled up one and then it had 300 miles on it and you drove 400 miles, you burned through that first one and you'd have to tap 100 miles into one of those other gas tanks. And that's what we do. When we burn more than we eat, we tap into one of our storage tanks, which would be body fat. But we also tap into glycogen. And we prefer glycogen because it's an easy source and we don't want to burn body fat because you only have so much of that. And if you ever have a time of famine and you burn that off, that's how you die. So your body wants to burn the glycogen first. And once you burn through that, it starts sending really strong signals. You know, your body is very simple. It sends pain signals, you know, and those pain signals are that you're tired, that you have no energy, and your appetite is sky high. So you burn through glycogen, your body knows, oh crap, there's a famine. We're going to start eating our body fat. I have to tell the body that don't move. You know, you're too tired to move. You have no energy. Whether you do or you don't, it's telling you that. And go find food. So you become incredibly food focused and you have no energy. And that's the worst thing you want. So the trick then is how to manage that glycogen. And so what we do is we deplete calories all week. So you burn through your glycogen, you get into a deep deficit, you start burning your body fat stores. And then right when your body would start really sending those signals, wanting to slow its metabolism down regulating thyroid, we load carbohydrates for 1 day. And we actually eat a surplus. We eat more calories than you burn, which seems counterintuitive because that's calories in, calories out means you're storing calories. But because we're eating a lot of carbohydrates and we're doing it in a case where we're extremely glycogen depleted, we will store those calories, but we're going to store them as glycogen rather than fat. So it's kind of a way to cheat the system. You know, thermodynamics still hold. The net energy balance is the same, only we've tricked the body into storing glycogen in this case, which then allows us to go eat in a deeper deficit the rest of the week and burn even more fat the rest of the week. And over time, it leads to an improvement of body composition over the same net, you know, like if you did that for 6 years or at the same 6-year net calorie amount versus not doing that, you'll have an improved body composition.
That's something I've noticed is it seems like you hold on to tissue more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And then the fat it's like, well, where to go?
Yeah. Well, you have to, and then you can think like you can walk through it. It's like, so, you know, we have glycogen. If we burn through all that and we're starting to burn fat, we still need to use glycogen somehow. But if we don't have any in the muscles, we have to create it. And it's like, how would we create glucose? You know, gluconeogenesis. We would glucose, you know, glucose is glucose, neo is new, and genesis is create. So we create new glucose, but we create that from proteins, and which could be muscle proteins, which means we break down muscle to create that glycogen, or we break down the protein we eat to do it. Both things we don't want. So you're going to create that either way, you know. And so that's why people like on really low calorie diets where they do very low carb for a long time, they start getting weaker and they're losing weight, but their body fat isn't changing that dramatically. And it's because of that, because yes, they're losing weight, but they're so glycogen depleted and they're never replenishing that glycogen that they're at the risk of breaking down muscle tissue to create that glucose.
Yeah. So you talk about the starvation signals, and like that's something that I mean, that hit me hard like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And like I couldn't shut it off.
Yeah, there's a limit. I mean, the body's really good at surviving. It's the truth because we're just so not adapted for how we are currently.
Yep.
It's only been, for 200,000 years of like Homo erectus or however long, or in 50,000 years of relatively modern, tribal humanism. It's only been like the last 150 years where we've had an option of surplus calories, so all these mechanisms kept us alive. Like when you were hungry or when you were depleting glycogen, it meant there weren't enough woolly mammoths to kill, and the way to survive that was to sit in your cave, exhausted, not moving at all, and be hyper food focused. So if any food came in your way whatsoever, your brain instantly jumped on it and you got that food. Where now we have those same mechanisms, only we can't just sit and do nothing because we have to work and do our daily stuff, and there's food everywhere. so it's like we're behind the 8 ball and not a good situation. It's very hard now, and that you can see why, because what allowed us to survive as humans is also what makes it very difficult to not be overweight now.
Mm-hmm. So before we kind of talk about my process of working with you, which has been absolutely incredible, you mentioned moving the needle 1 or 2 standard deviations.
Mm-hmm.
Like to the guys that you look at that are on a bodybuilding stage, like the Nick Walkers, the guys at that level, what levers do you think they have thrown that have allowed them to get to there? Is it their nutrition's that great?
Yep. It's nutrition, and I'll tell you why it's nutrition.
Yep.
Roughly 3 million Americans use PEDs. I think whoever calculates Census Bureau, whoever decides that, says that roughly 3 million Americans use PEDs in any given year. There's a little over 300 million Americans. So already 1 in 100 of us are on steroids, but you think that's 1 in 100, like babies, 90-year-old women. So you think, like, who does 99.9% of anabolic use entail? It's like 18 to 44-year-old men. Well, how many 18 to 44-year-old men are there? I don't know, like 75 million. So you have 3 out of 75 million. That means 1 in 25 adult men use anabolics in any given year. Do 1 in 25 adult men even have a gym membership? So when you go to the gym, essentially every dude there statistically is on something. Yeah. So why don't they look like bodybuilders? Why don't they look like Nick Walker? Well, it can't be just the PEDs, because everyone's using, and like especially now with TRT and stuff, that's why everyone's using it. So why don't we all look? Well, so is it the training? Well, it can't be the training, because everyone's got the same equipment. Everyone does a bench press for chest. Everyone does a leg press for legs, for quads. So we're all, like it could be, so the things like the training intensity matter, the amount of PEDs obviously matter, but that can't be the limiting factor, because everyone who wants to look like a bodybuilder is training really hard, probably taking more PEDs than they should already. So those can't be the difference. So the difference is nutrition. And you can see it, and no one wants to believe it. And I didn't want to either, like I was sure it was PEDs, until, and the way PEDs are is that it sets you up for failure. Because what do? You do your first cycle and it's a low dose like test or something, and you're sure you start the cycle and you're sure in 6 weeks you're going to look like Nick Walker. And when that doesn't happen, what do you say? Well, it's because I just did tests. It's the D-ball or anadrol. That's what does it. So the next cycle you do that and you still don't look like. Well, then what? Well, it's got to be like DECA. I'm just not taking enough. So then you take more and you take more, and each time it doesn't happen, and then eventually you get to the point where you're taking a lot of stuff and you still don't look like Nick Walker. So then what do you say? It's the growth hormone. It's obviously, right? It's always been the growth hormone. That's why it's so expensive, Yeah. So let me try that. You try, growth hormone. You don't take very much because it's expensive, and you don't look like Nick Walker. So then you say, well, it's because I'm not taking enough growth hormone. That's obvious. I've tried all the steroids and I've tried growth hormone. I just haven't tried a lot of it. Then you try a lot of it, and that still doesn't work. And then, so what's the next thing is then, insulin. Obviously, I've read about it. It's been in front of my face the whole time. This whole time, I can't believe I missed it. So then you still don't look like Nick Walker. Well, what sucks is that process, because you do cycle, time off, cycle. That process is years. And so if you don't sit down and really think things through, and you let yourself fall into that trap, it can be 6, 7, 8 years down the road. You've done all this. Now you're blasting high doses of gear, high doses of GH, using insulin, and you still don't look like a pro bodybuilder. Now what? Now you're fucked. You're almost towards a decade in, but it's the nutrition, because if it was the PEDs are cheap now. you know, or even if they weren't cheap, it would just be whoever had a rich dad, you know, would be Mr. Olympia, you know. Obviously genetics play a role also, but and it's not the training. We know it's not the training, or we see bodybuilders train, you know. If it was the training, then why Flex Wheeler or Paul Dillette, you know?
Yeah.
Why were they as good, you know? So there's like that proof is right in front of us. Obviously training matters, but there's very low correlation between bodybuilding placings, muscle size, and how hard someone trains. And we have proof of that now because we can watch them train. We used to not be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the nutrition. And go back to Nick Walker, and I've used this example a lot of times. A couple of years ago, there was a video on, I don't know, somewhere, probably on Instagram or something, but they threw him a party, like whoever he was with at the time, whatever supplement company, threw him a birthday party for his birthday, and they're at some restaurant, and Nick's in the middle of the off season, not prepping, nothing. But what does he do? He walks in with Tupperware on his birthday, at his birthday party at a restaurant, and he's eating his chicken and rice out of his Tupperware on his birthday at a restaurant where he'd get free food of anything he wanted. Yeah. And that's the difference. And same thing, like you get a bunch of gym bros sitting around, they talk about gear. They all want to talk about gear. That's all they want to talk about. You know, their cycles. You get a bunch of pro bodybuilders around, all they talk about is food. When we book like for our photo shoots for First Attachment, that's it's like they're like a broken record. It's, is there gonna be food? What are they catering to? Can I bring food? I gotta travel. You know, is there a kitchen? Where am I staying? You know, there's a microwave. Do I have a fridge? That's all they care about is food. What are you eating? How many carbs are you eating right now? What's your training days look like? How many carbs are you eating around training? That's all pros talk about. Gym bros talk about gear. Pros talk about food.
Yeah. So do you think that there's anything training wise that can be done to give you that extra 1%?
No, unfortunately, no. Training's for performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks because I love training, and I would, because if there was, I feel like I would have been a much better bodybuilder because I love training and I train hard, you know. And I feel like if there was a way to get that 1%, I would have been a pro bodybuilder, you know. But it isn't. Training's for performance, and the proof is in front of us on that too. Like watch heavyweight boxing, Tyson Fury, you know. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. Does he look like a bodybuilder? You watch UFC, Daniel Cormier, light heavyweight champion. You know, whenever there's a bodybuilder boxer or bodybuilder UFC guy. Yeah. I mean, training is for performance, and that matters because you need to be strong. You need to be explosive. But being strong and explosive, look at Olympic weightlifters. They don't look like bodybuilders, you know. And so it's a weird thing is that like to look like how you look is from the food and from the diet. How you perform is from training. And so you could take, and I would bet my life on this. You take 100 people and put 50 of them on one side and 50 on the other and give all 100 the exact same cycle and have this side train like pussies but eat a perfect bodybuilding diet. This side train like animals but eat garbage, eat just fast food and shit. This side's going to look like bodybuilders. That side isn't. That side's going to be strong as hell and can kick the shit out of this side in any sport. But they're not going to look like bodybuilders. And this side's not going to be strong, and they'd lose to any athletic event, especially a strength event, but they're the ones who are going to look like bodybuilders.
Yeah, like a big part of my book of business is training fighters. Like I've got some guys I distance train, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. And a lot of those guys, they look like they look because their workload's so damn high.
Yeah.
But like the performance aspect of training is what I really get into. I mean, I love throwing these levers at certain times, and they are always shocked at the end of the whatever little block that we're in. They're like, well, why do I feel like this? Well, because you did the damn work and we followed the progression. And it's at this point, I can give you this thing blindfolded and it's always going to work. Yeah. But when I had one that just couldn't keep weight on it, period. And like, dude, you're training 5 hours a day. What am I supposed to do? Here you go. Do a high carb day, drink a bunch of orange juice. And he did that, and his weight started to stay on him, and it was awesome. And his performance just went up and up and up. So it's like that to me was like the test where nutrition it is where it's at.
And even that, there's different nutrition for performance and for appearance. And I give like a simple example would be like if I was doing cardio to burn fat, I don't want to drink a bunch of juice during the cardio or carbohydrates or sugars because I'm trying to burn fat. I don't want to supply it with that other energy source. You know, I want to deplete the energy source of my body. So if I'm going to do cardio to get ripped, I'm not drinking gel packs. I'm not drinking Gatorade. But if I was going to run a marathon and wanted to win, I'm drinking gel packs. I'm drinking Gatorade, and I'm trying to get as many calories as I can without triggering an insulin response or bogging me down. And that's, so it's the same thing. Like if I was going to do a high day for someone on to perform, we want the high day before the event, you know, so they have all those. But if I want you to build muscle, I have the high day on the event, you know. Yes, you might not have as good of a workout, but that doesn't matter because the workout doesn't need to be that hard, but we need to feed that workout to create the growth from it. Yeah. So that's like another tricky thing that people don't really, because they always like, coach, you put my high day on leg day, but I feel so sluggish on high day. And wouldn't it be, I'd get such a better workout if I put it the day before. It's like, I know you would, but then how are you going to grow from it? Because then leg day is a medium day with not enough calories.
I like that. All right. So I think we've been working together about 2 years.
Or a little over, right? Yeah, maybe even longer. Yeah. I can tell you probably. I got all your files.
But like for me, I came to you because I initially learned about you a lot more from the Stronger program that Dave Tate put forward. I was one of his beta testers on it.
Oh, yeah.
When it came into like the I guess phase 3, which is like the lose body fat time, like I started the carb cycle and I'm like, holy crap, like this really works. And I couldn't figure out why exactly. So
yeah, it works, but what sucks is it's hard.
Yeah,
my diets suck. Like they're less effective, but like that they're way less difficult because everything we're doing is like triggering hunger responses, and it's hard. Yeah,
they're coming on like a low day off a high day, and it's like, holy crap, I'm starving, and I think these calories are about 1,000 higher than what they were, a month ago. So so it's not a big deal. But I initially hired you because I wanted to. I told a coach of mine that ended up he died. His gun fell out of his holster and shot himself. Like it was freaking just like it was just weird. So we had this goal to get me down to 230, and that's what I came to. I was like, man, I just want to get down to 230 by the time my 40th birthday, and we beat it by like 2 weeks, and it came down from like 292.
Was it that high?
Yeah, it was like 60 pounds. It was like 60 pounds that it came down from.
Oh man, and we were killing you too. You were doing in August of 2021. You're doing 30 minutes of HIIT with almost no added fats. That suck. Yeah, and oh man, and really no carbs on low days, and looks like 105 grams of carbs on medium days, and that was 5 weeks still left in your diet.
Yeah. And I remember telling you at the end of it, I was like, can we push a little bit farther? He's like, you're like, I think we're good for right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, because you get in that, like, when you get in that obsessed mindset, you really can, like, your body almost like shuts down. I mean, you're still hungry and stuff, but it's like, it learns to adapt, and you get in this like situation where you almost like enjoy the suffering, even though you hate it, but it's like, you don't know any different. It's, like, you're like with anything, it's hard to change. And so you're almost like scared of, like, you're scared. Like you feel like if I'm not in misery, then it must be bad, Yeah.
And I've kind of fell into that a little bit this week because things are sky high right now in terms of where they were previously. And it's the thing that kept me going before was one more day. Let's see what else pops up. Because like a new vein would pop up every couple of days. It was like, oh, this is pretty damn cool. It's like, it's almost, it's like a drug in itself.
Just
cool seeing that kind of progress.
Your food difference. So from when you were fatter in the first diet, we were on like zero, like a fraction of the calories, doing a ton of cardio. Now you're doing just 12 minutes of cardio. You have 285 grams of carbs on medium day, 175 on low day. So, and you have 2 high days. Yeah. So that's the stuff that's cool to me. Like your body composition now, eating about 3 times it's still not a lot of food. You're still, it's not eating chicken wings. But that's one of my favorite things, is to see the progress over time when you get someone who, will have them at, 15% body fat, and they're killing themselves to get there. And then a year or 2 later at 12% body fat, they're eating 2 high days a week and having, 100 grams of carbs after training.
So why do you think that is? Like, why do you think the body works like that?
Just like slow, there's very slow and mild adaptations. It's not like starvation mode isn't a thing. Your metabolism doesn't shut down. But what happens is your need, like your excess energy, you don't have any energy, so you don't burn any calories other than the cardio. What happens is people, like when they're on starvation diet, their body doesn't like start trying to hold on to anything. Their metabolism doesn't change. They just stop moving and they stop burning less calories. And so we just when we just slowly improve your metabolism, slowly increase the things, your thyroid is slightly upregulated. You'll hold a little bit more muscle. Every pound of muscle burns like 50 extra calories a day, so you add 10 pounds of muscle, that's 500 calories a day. That's a pound of fat a week. We get to, we get 500 calories a day in a deficit is a pound of fat a week, so we can stay at the same calorie count with 10 pounds of muscle and lose a pound of fat a week, So if we just do a small thing, if we increase your metabolism by 200 calories a day, which isn't very much, that's within the range that can easily happen, and we add 10 pounds of muscle, that's 700 calories a day we can eat, more calories we can eat every single day at the same body composition, actually better body composition. Or we could eat 500 calories a day more and still lose a half a pound of fat a week, and it's like those little things that, because if we have 200 calories a day is almost half a pound of fat a week, so we can eat more and lose fat, and that just slowly keeps building up, because now you're eating more and burning fat, so it's easier to get lean. So we get lean quicker, we get lean sooner, we stay lean longer, and then when you go in your off season, you don't get fat as soon, so you build muscle quicker. And it's the little things that add up, and it's little things that really do add up, because none of this happens fast. Adding 10 pounds of muscle takes a year. People think they're going to do it in a month. No, it takes a year. But and people think 10 pounds of muscle isn't that much, because you can bloat up, or you can take a PED and gain 10 pounds of water overnight. But 10 pounds of actual muscle completely changes everything. You add 20 pounds of muscle, we can now eat 1,000 calories per day more, and at the same body fat. Or we can eat 500 calories a day more and still lose a pound of fat a week. So it's like, and then that's just baseline. That's just for that muscle to survive. That doesn't change the fact that now that you're eating more calories, your daily activity is going to be higher. You're going to be lifting more weight in the gym, so you're burning more calories too. So you could, more likely what's happening is you gain 20 pounds of muscle. We are now able to eat 500 calories more per day and lose 2 pounds of fat a week, because you burn 500 calories a day more, and your metabolism is 1,000 calories a day higher. So you can only imagine, like, how much easier is life if I can eat more food than I'm eating now to maintain my body weight and lose 2 pounds of fat a week in the process.
Yeah. Like, I think it's pretty neat. Like, what's the wildest transformation that you've had, like, whether it's a pro or just a regular guy? I mean, can you explain that?
Like, wild ones would be like Ben Pollock.
Yeah,
they're like almost artificial, because Ben was trying to make 181 for US Open for powerlifting, but he was walking around like 227. But he dieted down for a physique show, and he was like 181 at weigh-ins. And I started working with him right after that, like the minute he stepped off stage, and we did a full rebound protocol. Well, you remember, he was really 227 pounds in pretty good shape already. So we have like all that weight before but he went up to like over 280 inside of the year. So he gained 100 pounds, and he still had striated glutes, but it's artificial. And the thing is, the weird thing about like bodybuilding is, the worse you are now, the better you get to be in the future. Meaning, like, to build the most muscle, and this is why the permabulkers stay the same size and refuse to diet down and never add muscle. To build the most muscle, you almost want to lose muscle now, and certainly the way to get the most muscle at any future date is to get as lean as possible now. So if you take two people, say two people are 220 pounds at 15% body fat today, and you have one person keep trying to add muscle, well, you can't eat very much because you're already 15% body fat, and anything north of 12%, you're already reducing your anabolism, because your testosterone production is reduced, your aromatization to estrogen starts dropping after 12%, your insulin sensitivity decreases. So he has very little room. It's really difficult to add muscle, but he doesn't want to waste time. He doesn't want to take time off of building muscle, So he's maybe building like a couple pounds a year. You take that same 220 pound person at 15% and diet him down to like 185 at 5% body fat. He's gone straight in the opposite direction for the first 4 months. So, 220 pound guy is maybe now 221 at 15 or 16% body fat. He's gained a pound of muscle. This guy's lost all this weight. But now what he basically you're doing, you're not losing, you're just setting up a slingshot, and now you slingshot out of that. You're 185 pounds. You can gain 10 pounds of fat and still be ripped at that point, So think what you could do with that. Your insulin sensitivity is sky high. You're in a body fat range where you can gain like 20 pounds of fat before you're before you start not being optimally anabolic. So you have so much room to add calories. That guy will slingshot and he'll be 230, in 8 weeks. Where the 220-pound guy who's been dieting, who's been trying to build muscle for 6 months is now 221 or 222. And the guy who spent the first 4 months just losing everything is now 230 on that same date.
Yeah. So the best way to get big is to hold yourself
lean
in a weight class for years.
Yeah, it is. And it's like how many powerlifters have you seen that like open the floodgates, or the guys that stop, like Derek Lunsford, when he finally stops trying to make 212? It's like he'll never be big enough for open. It's like, well, he will, because he's been killing himself. Not only will he be big enough for open, but he's going to win the open,
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird the way it works. And I wasted the first 8 years of my really hard training as a permabulker because I didn't want to get small. I just want to be big and strong. I let my body fat get too high, and I was strong, because you can be strong. Fat's good for being strong. Cushions the joint, compresses the joints. It's almost like wearing knee sleeves across every joint. But then when I finally dieted, because I was like 275, not like fat, maybe 15% body fat, in the off season. And I was sure I was going to be like 240, 245, just shredded when I did my first real diet. 245 came, still fat. I'm still in the skinny fat phase. I haven't even looked lean yet. 240 still fat. 235 fat. 230, 225, 220. I finally got down all the way to 213, and I was still nowhere close to being ready to step on stage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my, I've lost 60 pounds, and I'd still look fat on the contest stage, and I thought I was going to be ripped at 2, but that was my first rebound, and that I was like, a month later, I was 260, and way leaner than I was even at 240 before, mm-hmm. And I still, that was my engagement pictures, I remember. And that was luckily, I had those pictures, because this is before cell phones and stuff. Yeah. I mean, people kind of had cell phones, but you still took real photos. And so I could those pictures got posted everywhere, and I could see what I looked like. And that's when it really clicked in my mind. I was like, what was I doing? And I was like, well, I came out of the diet. My appetite was sky high. I knew I was absorbing everything. I was progressing in the gym like crazy. And that was really what triggered it for me. I was like, that's the diet. And sure enough, the next time I dieted down, I won the Mr. Michigan at 213 that next year, which then I rebounded out of again. 2 years later, I was 245 at the Junior USAs that I won, rebounded out of that, and I was 266 a week out of the USAs. And that was kind of when I left the sport. But yeah.
So you transitioned into powerlifting after that, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, powerlifting is what I started with, so it didn't really feel like a transition. The transition was that was in the peak of the triple play days.
Yeah.
And I never used any of that. I never knew how to use it. And the first time I put on any equipment was I tried it a week out of my first meet. I had no idea what it would do, really. And so I remember I picked my opener on squat as what I thought what I could do raw. Mm-hmm. I picked 760 or 775 or something. And it was popped up, I almost jumped out of the ground. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Because I just picked all my openers as what my raw lists were, because I didn't know what the equipment was going to do. But I never really liked the equipment, because I never took the time to train it. And I'm really glad to see powerlifting come back to the because I feel like it was almost like that period needed to happen, because now the training techniques really advanced with the gear stuff, because it was so much precision, and it became more about just raw brute strength. There was a ton of precision involved. Mm-hmm. And I think that precision then carried over now back to raw, and you're seeing raw numbers that are just
it's crazy.
It doesn't make sense how strong people are now. A 2,000 pound raw total is I mean, that was unheard. I mean, that was you were
you're one of the best in the world.
Yeah, you were an all-time. I mean, remember guys from the 70s. I mean, that was a big deal. A 2100 raw was, you were famous. And now it's good luck. Hopefully you win your local meet. It's just ridiculous. 800-pound deadlifts left and right. I remember when there was 3 people on earth pulling 900 before Andy Bolton and Benny first pulled 1,000. Mm-hmm. There was KK, Benny, Andy. Who else was a 900-pound puller? But there was no one, and then and there was 10 people who pulled 800 in the world. And now it's I'm seeing Instagram accounts of guys I don't even know. 865 today, my last heavy day before the meet. And I'm like, who are you? And how are you pulling close to 9 bills?
Yeah, and some of them are, I want to say rail thin, but I mean, they're not gigantic dudes. They just got the leverages. They're built for it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the sumo stuff, the sumo lifts, people get mad about it, but that is like mesmerizing to me.
Yep, same here.
How just talk about like as an engineer, like using leverages. That's like mind blowing to me, because like you see some of those guys, it's like, God, that you could not run a computer program to design a better pull with your leverages. And guy like Jamal B pulling 1100 now, like in 500 kilograms. There's like 8 guys. There's some guy in Russia, Ivan Markov, who's like doubled 460 kilograms, and he's tried 500 a couple times. And there's like a handful. You might have to use 2 hands now to count the guys pulling 500 kilograms. I mean, there's Jamal, there's Eddie Hall, there's Half-Thor. Who wasn't there? Wasn't there another sumo guy that did it recently? But it's like, that was like when Eddie first did it, I was like, well, there's one that'll never get beat.
Now it's by a week.
Yeah.
Like I got a high school powerlifting team that I work with because it's a high school I teach with, and all my guys pull sumo. I make them do it because like their adductors are weak. That's why I just tell them, hey, we're going to do this because it's going to set you up for success.
At high school too, like, have you seen the memes of there's shows dogs pooping? You know what dogs look like when they poop with the back all around it? Yeah. And it's like when you walk into the gym and the high schoolers are deadlifting.
I think it's hilarious though. But
that's good because like sumo prevents that, because I could like, it's so hard to learn when you're a kid. As a teenager, I think for whatever reason, learning the correct form, because I look back on, I can think back to what my form was like on deadlift, and it was pathetic as a teenager. I don't know what it is because it seems like, I bet if you ask a 5-year-old kid to pick something up, they'll have decent form. It's like we lose it somehow in puberty.
Yeah, it's strange, but it makes these kids so mad though. And it's like, why can't I pull conventional? You just pulled double your body weight and you're 14. Like, why does this matter?
And don't you play sports? Don't you want strong glutes and adductors?
They just don't get it. And it kind of boggles my mind. It's like, if I could have brought let me rephrase this. As a high school guy, we couldn't pull any weight but sumo anyway. And none of us were extraordinarily strong, as the coach wouldn't let us put over 365 on the bar because he was afraid he was going to break it. It was the only bar in town.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's super cool. I told the same kid that he pulled double body weight right before we left at the end of school. It's like, dude, you're going to pull 500 easy by the time you're a senior. I
think an easy way to ask that is have a fake drill and have like a sideline drill or someone run at someone and say, now break down and make the tackle. And then right when he breaks down, say, look how you're standing. Are you standing like a conventional deadlift, or are you standing like a sumo? Your feet are wide, or you have a guy like, pretend you're on first base, you're taking your lead off. Are you standing conventional, or you're standing sumo? Are you're in your linebacker position, or you're running, your 2-point stance as a fullback or a running back. What are you standing like? Are you standing with your feet 2 inches apart? Or are you standing like almost like a sumo pull? Maybe not a full sumo, but certainly when you're leading off at first base, you're pretty much an exact sumo stance.
That's a good. I've never thought of it like that, but it's 100% dead on. I got one more question. I'm going to keep you forever, but it's for the.
I'll talk forever.
I enjoy the conversation, but for the guy that needs to get started nutrition wise and they don't really know what to do, like what's your first piece of advice for someone that just needs to get it together, just to get
like for strength, performance, and physique? It's simple. It's pick it, kill it, grow it. If you can't pick it from a tree, grow it in a garden, or hunt it for meat, don't eat it. And even to simplify it even further, all building muscle and getting strong is meat. Well, we have shirts: chicken, rice, repeat; meat, rice, repeat; steak, rice, repeat. I mean, if you took, it's expensive, but if you took a 16-year-old kid and had him eat, not measure it, not count calories, just 4 to 6 times a day, have him eat steak and rice, he'll be 99. I mean, he'd be like 90% as good as he would be if he did everything perfect. But he 100% would be better than he would be trying to figure out what perfect is and drinking protein shakes and trying, like if he worked with a coach and did everything perfect, he could be better. But like, other than that, that's better than trying to find the right supplements, trying to follow some fad diet. It's simple, like that's how our bodies were like built. I mean, meant to, we need complex carbohydrates, we need whole, complete protein amino acids, and we need fats. The only 2 nutrients we need are essential amino acids and essential fatty acids. That's it. We don't have to eat anything else. And that's why meat is really so important. It's a whole, slow digesting, complete protein with essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. And then you want an easily digested carbohydrate source like rice that's very low allergy risk, very easy to digest, easy to get into high amounts. Obviously there's more involved, but like that, you can get pretty darn, you could get the guy who did nothing but eating meat and rice for 4 years in high school is going to be better than everyone else, except maybe someone who hired a nutritionist and actually listened to that person, which is almost the probability of a high school kid listening to a precision nutritionist for 4 years is 0.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. It's harder when you're young because you think you know everything anyway.
Oh yeah. I look back. I remember thinking like I was coachable, but I look back and I'd hate to coach myself now thinking back because I was stubborn and I thought I knew everything. And I remember like, I remember like even every once in a while someone will pop up now and I'll think back and be like, oh fuck, that's why he said that. Yeah, shit. I thought it took me 25 years to realize I was an idiot.
Yeah, that's kind of the wild thing is the hindsight stuff where like I did a podcast with my old boss the other day, and he was the guy that really taught me how to be a strength coach, how to manage different teams, how to talk to coaches and whatnot. And at first I just was like, yeah, whatever, man, you don't know what you're talking about. But then I got to the next place and it's like, if I do everything like he told me to do it, I'll be better than 90% of these guys in the conference.
Yeah.
So it's amazing just how a little bit of experience can just teach you, but you've got to do it first.
Yeah. Well, that was always my problem is I like, I have to be convinced, and even though it's just stupid, but like if something doesn't make sense to me, my brain won't believe it. And which sucks because then a lot of times like 20 years later is when it will finally make sense, but yeah.
So what's the biggest example of that for you?
Man, like stupid little things. Like I remember like buying Tony Crime Dog what was Tony McGriff?
McGruff Crime Dog?
Yeah. But he had like the play like the majors VHS tape, and I bought cash on the. And I remember like because I played left field in high school, and I was like baseball was my main sport. I was sure as a kid I was gonna be a pro baseball player. It was my whole life. It's all I cared about. And I pitched and caught and like in little league, played shortstop. By the time I got to high school, I like mostly was left field. I pitched and cut, but I wasn't like I got short fat fingers, so I was never gonna be a pitcher. And I played left field, and I remember like one of the drills he had was how to approach a ground ball. And it was like how approach with what foot forward, glove down, the bunny hop to throw. Well, that was to throw someone out. And my coaches would tell me to drop down to my right knee, and just like block it like a catcher. They're like, "Fuck that! What if someone runs?" And like an idiot, my brain never like realized like, yeah, well, if someone's running, if it's a base hit with someone on second, I might have to make the throw at home. That's when you do the Tony McGriff way. Any other play where you're just trying to prevent an error, it's when it clicks, I was like, oh my God, I was such an idiot. Like I was like mad at my coach and arguing like he was an idiot, where he was telling me like, no, there's a time and a place for everything. When, why come down, glove down, sprinting full force when the guy's already on first base and all you gotta do is stop the ball to keep him from going to second. I want to make every play like it's a play at home to win the game, but yeah, and I don't know what the coach could do, but that one really sticks to me for some reason because I was captain of the baseball team. My junior year, we were fourth in the state. We were always like a perennial baseball powerhouse, and like that, for some reason that one really, because it's so simple and like just because he didn't word it properly, he left it open to like where anyone with half a brain would interpret it correctly, but I didn't have half a brain, and I don't even remember when it clicked to me like a decade later, and I was just probably walking down the street and I was like, oh God, I feel like an idiot. But just stupid stuff like that. Or I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in football like that. Just, just dumb things that didn't quite make sense to me at the time, and my brain wouldn't accept it.
So as a dad, I got 4 boys, and you have 4 kids as well. Like, how do you help your kids realize those lessons sooner so they don't?
I don't think you can, because you think old people are stupid, like you think, well, not even that, but you just think like, oh, Dad, it was a different sport when you played, because I thought the same thing. Like I thought, like my coach, they played in the 60s, they don't know nothing about 1990s football, just like, and I catch it now because it's like it's almost embarrassing because I'll talk to because my oldest daughter's going to college next year, and our niece who's staying with us for the summer, she's the like social media director for the Kalamazoo Growlers, which is like an independent baseball league for like scouting kids to get scouted. And she goes to Michigan State, and she's always dating some football player or something. And she had some football player over for 4th of July from UNC Charlotte. Really cool kid. He's actually a really cool kid. Plays tight end, But like I could see him like when I would talk about we talk about football, and I could see like the wheels turning in his head, like, yeah, you played it, yeah, sure, Grandpa. And it's the things we're doing, which is the same thing. Like my father-in-law played football in college, and he was drafted for baseball, I think. But really good athlete. But like listen to him talk about, because the words are different. He played like wide receiver. He calls it end. Yeah. And so I don't think there is, because I think the kids, like just like we were when we were kids. We think like anyone older than us was ancient and played a whole. It was a totally different sport back then. And there's when it's the same sport. It's the athletes are athletes.
Yeah, and it's like my 9-year-old is this exact spitting image of me, and my wife kind of jokes about like this is the first kid ever created without an egg. He's just a sperm.
Yeah,
and it's like I see the things that he's gonna do right before he does it, and I'm like, just please don't, just please.
It's so hard.
This one. Yeah, it still happens.
Yeah, because it's frustrating, but you can picture like I don't know, like my dad told me stuff that. Sure, dumbass. Yeah, sure, Dad. Sure, he was right, and I was the dumbass, because kids are dumbasses, but we're such dumbasses that we don't realize that that we are.
So for the next generation, how do they not be such dumbasses? I'll leave it at that.
Man, I don't think it's possible. I don't know, because it's even worse now. Because how do you relate with them? Like if I can't even say like have you heard the word Riz? It's like if you got Riz, it means like you're like get ladies. I don't know. It means you like you're a dude that gets laid. Well, it doesn't matter anymore, because that was last week. Because now if you say it, as soon as someone our age knows it, it's it's off limits. So there's no way to, because if you can't talk in their language, because if you know their language, it's no longer their language. It's the lame language that was their language last month. Yeah. And so I just don't even think you can. I mean, I don't. Because I coach my girls in travel softball all the way up through 12U. And like baseball is my life. I was like, I mean, as far as like studying the sport, and like the little intricacies and like first and third plays, and I was obsessed, just like learning anything. Like I learned physics, like I was really like way too nerdy about learning it when I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. But like trying to explain it to like the 12-year-old girls, like they think like when I played baseball, it was just like Honus Wagner era, like we didn't even. It was just a different sport in their mind. And I think I thought the same thing. I can picture my high school football coaches talking about it, and me picturing them playing football in the 60s with clothesline tackles and thinking like, the wing tee, you guys ran, it's not even the same sport. Why would I listen to anything? I mean, I wasn't that bad, but I like subconsciously I thought that.
Yeah, like I'm a high school teacher, so the language that kids use, I think that's hilarious. Yeah. I'll play purposely stupid with them. Like I finally figure something out.
Yeah.
It's just like, so I'll say that to them and say it completely out of context. This so they have to go back and try to correct me.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how much I like to fuck with them. So it's, I think it's part of being a coach as well. Is like you learn that certain way to kind of talk to them, to mess with them.
Yeah. And coaches are, I think like, they're probably not underrated, because I think everyone realizes their importance, or anyone who plays sports, but I think they're like hugely important, because so many kids don't have a father figure. Even if they don't have a strong father figure. And for so many kids, even if they have a strong father figure, I mean, I had a really strong father figure, but like I still there's countless like, life impactful things I've learned from my coaches. I think that's like so much so that like, I think every kid should have to play multiple sports a year up through high school, at least 2. I really do. And I think like for sports, because if not even just for sports, but for sports especially, because if you look like the NFL draft every year, that they did it like a couple years ago, they did the stats, and I think it was like 92 or 93% of players drafted were 3 sport athletes in high school.
Yep.
And 99% of them were 2 sport athletes.
Yep.
No one, like, so all these people want to specialize in a sport. None of those kids are playing professional. Every person that plays professional was a 2 or 3 sport player in high school, because you have to be an athlete. You don't specialize until you're a professional, maybe in college, but
Yeah.
And then also I think like what you learn from sports is so much more important than in different ways than what you learn in school about how to be a person, how to be a teammate, how to have people rely on you, how to be reliable, how to do things you don't want to do, how to work hours you don't want to work, how, like, and I think like I worry as a culture, like we're probably going to lose that with the way the internet is and stuff. And, outside activity becomes less and less and less. And I think it's a great disservice. Hopefully it gets picked up elsewhere where like the team stuff happens through like, I don't know, Call of Duty or, hopefully something like that replaces it. And I probably will, because humans have been around a long time and there's always been somehow to create that team sensation. But I just feel like, seeing like as a boy, seeing the adult male perspective from, a variety of adult men who have your best interest in heart is just something is really important. And especially the kids who don't have a male influence at home.
Yeah, that's the sad part about it is, like, I've taught inner city and shit, most of the dads were in jail.
Yeah, and that's like when they talk about like toxic masculinity, and it's like, no, it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's weak men.
Yeah, exactly. And it's these kids who grew up without a strong, strong male figure, because like that's the exact opposite. Like a strong male father figure and strong male coach figures throughout their life. You can like, I don't think you need to do a study. I'm sure there has been studies, but I guarantee it'll show a better like adult success rate and happiness for boys who had that than boys who didn't. Absolutely. And you can just look at the stats of like fatherless homes and kids in jail. It's not to get on a rant here, but for you, I can't remember what the stat they used. Was it college or combined? There was some statistic. I think they looked at like risk of being in jail, graduating with a college degree, and whatever their stats they looked at. Well, fatherless homes, it was like 90% of people in jail come from fatherless homes. But then they looked at single parent homes, and it turns out that single parent homes where the father was a single parent had the same rate of college admittance and the same low risk of jail time as dual parent homes. So it's like the father that made the difference in both cases, which makes sense because like, the mother is really, necessary and mega important and like absolutely important for the early stages, like you can't have a kid without the mother, and there's no way like, as much as I think I'm a great father, if it was just me alone, and without my wife when the kids were 2 months old, like God, like I hope they make it, but I mean I wasn't ready for, I'm not built for that, But I think like when you get to like when they start being teenagers and stuff like that, I think and this data seems to support it, that it's the having a good male masculine figure that leads to a successful adult life for men and women.
Yeah, like I'm a handful of my football guys from Southeast Missouri State when I coached there. It was a group of guys when I got there that had no camaraderie whatsoever, and they just blamed each other for all the mistakes. And so I took my role to be the absolute motherfucker that they all hated.
Yeah.
And because I needed to create some kind of bond between them. So I could push them so hard that they all want to hate me, which is great because now they'll actually come together.
But there's psychological stuff to support that. One, how do guys hang out? Like you make fun of each other, you know who your best friend is by the one you can joke, you like, talk about having the smallest dick. I don't know, like that's how you joke, like that's how guys, that's for whatever reason, that's how it works, like girls aren't that way, but guys, and maybe it builds tough skin because you get used to your buddy making fun of you. Then it doesn't, like who cares if some dude I don't know makes fun of me, it doesn't hit. But if no one can make fun of or goof around with anybody, then anyone goofs around with you. And then also like the initiation thing, which is not that hazing's good at all, and it's not, but in some ways there's a reason why there's Buds Week for SEALs training. And there's a psychological term, and they've done study after study to prove this, that the harder the initiation is to something, the stronger like your attachment to it, or the more you believe that it's the right thing. It's like, so like if your brain subconsciously thinks like, well, this was terrible to get into, so it must be good, and you get that with sports, and you get that with the way guys like, razz each other and kind of, dick around and shit on each other. But it's like, it ends up being like very important for like emotional stability and character growth, and which you know, at surface level, if you don't look into it deeper, it seems like the opposite, you know. I mean, not saying hazing's good, but like you think about hazing, it seems like 100% bad. It seems like there's no way it could be good, you know. But to some, like not like bad hazing, but like, you know, like dicking around or razzing or, you know, like goofing with each other and, you know, like little stupid little games kids, you know, boys play and make fun of each other. That ends up being like important for building like emotional stability and strength of character and stuff. And there's tons of tests to prove it, or studies to prove it.
Yeah, I one of my former football players at Yale was on my little podcast. We call it podcast. That's what I'm gonna call it. Yesterday, and he was talking about like the buds entry process and how there's a top 5, bottom 5. They're actually do that every week. Who's the top 5 in the class? Who's the bottom 5 in the class? He's like, well, at 250, that's easy. Yeah. But now we're X weeks into this thing, and we have 19 guys, and you're still asking me to do it. Still give you my bottom 5. I mean, we're all a bunch of badasses by this point. We're all stuck around. But he's like that part right there just kept him accountable to himself.
Yep.
Just to make sure that, hey, look, I need to be up in that top 5.
Yeah, and that's a thing we don't give the kids now, the fear of failure. You know, like because like failing sucks. It's not bad. You know, everyone fails. You know, and so you're not a bad person for failing, but you shouldn't be told you're a good person for it. You know, like a little bit of you know, that evidence that, especially because if you made it that far, there's no any one of you could not be in the bottom 5. Any one of the people that are in the bottom 5, if in the exact same situations, if they applied themselves just a little bit harder, they could have avoided that, you know, and everyone knows that. And everyone knows that, even when they're told the opposite, you know, even when they're told it's okay to fail. Or,
you did your best. It's okay.
Yeah, everyone knows the truth, you know, and so like coddling to that is so stupid because it's just not natural.
Like a basketball player of mine who's had all the intangibles, you know, the 6'7", could jump out of the gym, could shoot anywhere inside the arc. And I always told him he was the potential guy. He never, like, you got all of it in the world, man. like I'd take 20 of you guys if we could. But you don't have the intangibles. Like, you have the potential, but not the intangibles. Yeah. He never figured that out. And it kind of makes me sad, you know.
And I mean, it's true. I mean, there's only so much you can control, you know, and I'm sure a lot of it was, you know, related to his upbringing. And who knows what it is? But yeah, like, and I feel like we're just doing a disservice to people like that now with a lot of the way we do things, because, you know, 30 years ago, you probably would have been able to handle that differently, which might look bad. You know, you'd have been able to be harder on them, you know, like be rougher with them about it. And like in a lot of ways that seems like it might not be good, you know, but I think the opposite. I think it's like everyone who, like, you know, has a tough dad, you know, or a dad that was hard on them, or a coach that was hard on them. You absolutely hate it. You like, fuck you, coach, you know, like, but you at some point later on, you know, maybe you don't like them, but you look back and you view it differently later on. You don't view it, you might still not like them, but and you might not think you might not even think it was good, but you view it differently when you're older, and you look back and you're like, you realize that there maybe was a purpose to it.
I think there usually is, unless the person is
usually, yeah. I mean, there's the problem is, well, the problem is like if you're wrong, because some people just are assholes, you know, and terrible people, you know, and the line between like the tough coach who's riding your ass because he believes in you, and the coach is just an asshole is a thin line, you know, and that's the thing. That's the hard thing, is because you need to protect. The focus ends up being protecting kids from the asshole. And so so the way to do that is just not get anywhere near that line. But like the best coaches is pretty close to that line. You know?
And I always tell kids that it's if I'm not saying something to you, now there's the problem. It's you. Like it's because
I've given up. Yeah. So when I stop riding your ass, it doesn't mean you did. It's not because you did good. It's because I've given up. I know you're not. And I've tried my best.
Very cool. I really appreciate this conversation today, Justin. Like I said, I don't want to keep you much more than an hour. We are a little bit over, but where can people find you? Where can they learn more about you?
The easiest thing is probably just to Google Justin Harris Bodybuilding or Justin Harris Nutrition, but you can go to TroponinNutrition.com. And if you're watching this, you can scan this, hopefully. Or go to firstattachment.com. That's one ST. If you type it anyway, it'll come up. First Attachment Supplements or teamtroponin.com. Yeah, there you go. Battle testing.
I love it. You got great products.
Thank you.
And like I said, I don't think there's a better person with your skill set, with what you can provide, and also just as awesome as a person as you in the industry. So I appreciate your time today. And it's been an awesome one. I'll check in on Saturday.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.